Hello guys and welcome back to, I think this is the fourth video in this series, but don't quote me on that. Today we will talk about if statements, okay? And this is, I think, the first real exciting part of this YouTube course and of your programming journey, because it is, of course, you can understand intuitively, it is very important to execute certain parts of the code, like on a condition that, on a condition. For example, let's imagine we would have to write a program which checks whether a number is even, okay? We all know, just like basic math, that a number is even if you can divide it by 2 and there is no remainder. Okay, this is all there is to it. And now let's say you take some user input and you want to tell the user whether the number he entered is an even number. And of course, you have to run parts of the code like on a certain condition. You could say, in natural language, we just use simple if statements, right? In logic, although logic is a little bit tricky when it comes to that, there's a material implication. So we can always say, okay, if the number the user has entered is divisible by 2 without any remainder, then say, for example, the number you entered is even, else, or in any other case, okay, print out your number is not even, okay? So you can intuitively understand that this concept of a if statement is a very important one, and actually a very exciting one. So let's create a new project. I still have to think about how to organize like my files here, so creating a new project for every video is probably not the smartest idea, but let's stick with it for now, and let's simply write if statement create. Let's open it in this window right here. Okay. And now let's think about this stuff and let's see how we can actually write code like these if statements in Java. So we will talk about if statements. And in a way, everything you learn in this course builds up on like the first layer, okay? So we will talk about variables now, obviously, but we will also talk about operations. We will talk about data types. And in that way, your knowledge increases like constantly, okay? Because in every video, you almost always apply almost all of the concepts you learned previously, okay? So, as you might guess, first of all, I'll introduce you to the syntax. We simply write if, so far so clear, right? Then we have to like write these brackets right here. And then we'll have to specify a certain condition. For now, I simply call it condition. Then, and this is like, for example, also the difference between Java and Python, you have to write these curly brackets right here. And these define, and this is a very important concept as well, the scope. Almost wrote code there. The scope of your if clause. But there are also scopes of functions, scopes of loops, but I'll talk about them when we'll get there. Simply think about these brackets as indicating what the program will do if this condition is met, if some condition is met, okay? Okay, let's think about the simple example I gave you previously, okay? Let's declare a number, and let's make it is divisible. For example, 6. 6 is obviously evenly divisible, is divisible, let's say, by 2, so it's super clear. And now, let's write a boolean for now, okay? This is, I think, didactically a good way of doing it. Is divisible by 2 condition, okay? And as I told you in the previous video, you can do some like operations, okay? And the simple output of these operations you can store in a variable, okay? So, for example, we actually know how to write this condition, okay? We can say, I don't know what IntelliJ is doing right here. I don't want to, okay, indent it in that way. We know that num is divisible by 2, okay? This is our condition. Divisible, I'm sorry, by 2. Okay, let's make it a multi-line comment. This simply means that this number, okay, think about this as simply being a variable, meaning a box with a number. Let's, for simplicity's sake, suppose this the data type of the value is an integer, is divisible by 2 simply if we do perform the modulo operator. This is like the first time we talk about the modulo operator again, is equal to 0, okay? Actually, when I like edited the last video, barely edited it obviously, but I forgot a little operator. And this is the one right here, okay? Don't you ever, and this is a cardinal sin of programming in my eyes, confuse this operator right here with the assignment operator we, for example, use when declaring a variable, okay? Don't you ever do that, because these are way different operators. Simply means A, this little unknown operator right here, simply translates to A is identical in value to B, okay? So these are two boxes, inside of them there is a value, and if that value is identical between these two boxes, this evaluates to true, and in every other case it evaluates to false. Similarly, there is the, okay, let's write it in another line maybe. Similarly, if you would write This is simply the negation of this operator, okay? And we talked about like negating the outcome of this operation, and we talked about negation in depth in like the last video. A not equal B simply means A is not identical in value to B, okay? So these are like very intuitive operators, but still I forgot to mention them in the last video, I'm very sorry. But now we can actually understand that this is a like condition, and now from now on I would call this a statement, okay? Because in the statement is everything that evaluates to some value, okay? And we can understand that, for example, if we look at inside that box we declared there, or if it's just insert one specific value, we know, for example, this is a true condition, so this evaluates to true, yeah, and this would evaluate to false, obviously, since there's a remainder of 1, okay? So now simply write is divisible by 2. I really thought this is a bit too big. Zoom out. Yeah, this should be better, and I always forget to like do this, I'm sorry. Is divisible by 2, modulo 2 is 0, and you know this evaluates to true. And IntelliJ is a very smart editor, it's a very smart editor in the way that it tells you right here, you can simplify this, you dummy. This is always true, because, yeah, you can simply write true here, right? But I put the result of this operation into this little variable right here to demonstrate that in the end, this condition you specify right here, something like this, yeah, is a Boolean value. So, of course, and I demonstrate you this because if we simply ask this, and then we print out system.out print line, num is even, yeah, and then we write else, okay, meaning in the other case, if this condition is not met, okay, if previous condition is not met, we write system.out.println num is not even, okay. Now we can actually compile and run it, and you see this outputs num is even, but if I now change that value right here, so that this statement, this condition evaluates to false, we'll simply see num is not even, just as we expected. Of course, doing it in this way is simply for didactical purposes, because you would write in this case simply, first of all, you wouldn't call it is divisible by 2, maybe simply call it num for now. You would write like this condition right here, right? This makes way more sense, because why are you allocating memory if you just could evaluate it without allocating a memory for a variable, right? So if num modulo 2 equals is 0, then do this, and then we can skip that part right here, okay? But in the end, I wanted to show you that this is simply, of course, you write a statement, you write a condition here, but in the end, for the computer, if like the value of that variable is actually known, okay? So for example, we don't read and use input yet, okay, because we can't do that. But in the end, the compiler is able to figure out, okay, this statement is simply true. So we could also write true here, right? But of course, in this concept, it makes no sense. But this is in the end, when the program gets compiled, yeah, the computer evaluates the statement, and then if the compiler sees, okay, if true, then it jumps right into that part of the code, the corresponding part of the code. Okay, that was a little bit of a butchered explanation, because writing if true makes no sense at all. But I just wanted to tell you that these conditions are actually Booleans in a way, because this statement right here evaluates to a Boolean. This is like everything you need to know about what an if statement is in like the most basic sense. Yeah, so just maybe I butchered that explanation, so let me demonstrate you how to read and use input. Of course, you won't understand what I'm doing here, because we didn't talk about functions, we didn't talk about classes, yada yada, we didn't talk about libraries, but just stick with me, you don't have to understand it, but maybe it's nice if you actually see it. We create a so-called scanner object, user input scanner, I could call it adequately, new scanner, we read it from system.in, and of course now you see this, like, don't worry if you don't understand, because if you start our program, you obviously don't. And then we could ask, and this is just like as an aside, you can skip this video right here if you're not interested at this point in how to read and use input, but we could declare a string, for example, yeah. We could call this string is a variable that should hold the value of the input. So let's say user input content or something like that, and then we simply say user input scanner dot next line. Okay, and then we can say, okay, we have to do, and this is why I didn't want to talk about this right now. I think this may be a little bit overwhelming, but just stick with me for now, because we could say integer in the intermediate level on the data types the data types chapter, I talked about these wrapper classes, and this is a wrapper class right here, so you can watch that video if you would please, but I don't recommend it if you're a beginner and you're just starting out. Parse int, user input content. In a sense, you can understand what's going on here because the next line will take user input, and this will be a string. So what this function right here, this operator, think about it in as an operator right now, like the output of this operation right here is simply a string, and the string of the user input, right? And of course, we have to convert it first into an integer in order to do like these arithmetic operations like modulo net, okay? So in a way, you could understand what's going here, but if you don't worry. And now let's run it. And now we can actually input a number. Let's input 5, for example. Num is not even. Let's run this program again. 3 is even. Not even, I'm sorry. Like, talking so much, and I'm recording these videos after work, so it's, I'm a little bit exhausted, to be completely honest. So yeah, just to demonstrate, because now the value that this expression, the Boolean that this expression, this statement, sorry, evaluates to, is not known at compile time. Okay, there's an interesting distinction between compile time and runtime, but maybe I'll upload like a video on that topic as well. But simply know that realize that IntelliJ isn't annoying us anymore by telling us, okay, you can simply write true here because I know the value of that variable. It now doesn't annoy us because the value of that box isn't known at compile time, because you have to think about it. First, the program has to get compiled, okay, and then the user input is actually read into memory. So it actually makes sense if you think about it. But now I talked a lot about what actually isn't the topic, so let me repeat what we have learned, what we should have learned in this video. It's actually very simple. If you want to do like conditional jumps and do a conditional execution of like code, okay, simply write if, these brackets right here, these round brackets, specify condition. Remember, a condition is simply like, in the context of this if statement, statement that evaluates to a Boolean, meaning that evaluates to a truth value, okay? And if this condition is met, meaning if this evaluates to true at runtime, okay, this part of the code will be executed, and if this is not true, another part will be executed, and the stuff in the else code, okay? I think there will be an additional video on like if, else statements by giving you a very pretty easy coding practice. But for now, I think this is enough, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.